The day I bought the Cannondale started like any other day, scrolling through Instagram looking at cool bikes, one after another until inspiration hit. Then sending out messages on Craigslist and Facebook trying to locate my next build. I had recently become obsessed with the idea of riding an old 80s or 90s mountain bike. I want to do this for a couple of reasons. For one, what was it like to ride something with this original geometry on the trails? It's not like I'm so young as to not have ever ridden on 26-inch wheels, but by the time I started riding mountain bikes, they had come a long way. Secondly, I want to do a fun conversion. Make it a one-by, add a front rack, have something fun to ride around town on and pop off curbs, and generally get into mischief. Utilitarian but playful. Keeping a rigid fork would make small curbs and drops fun without dulling the experience with suspension. I found a guy selling what he had labeled a M500 out of Concord. I drove out there on my lunch break and picked up the bike. He had advertised it as just the frame, but when I picked it up, he had added some broken components to it. I guess he was feeling generous, or maybe had it listed as a complete bike that just needed a few things to get it going again. Got it back home, stripped it down to the frame, and found the serial number. This let me know it was actually a 1985 SM500. Not their more decked out M500 model as advertised. Not to worry though, it was still a Cannondale mountain bike of the era I wanted, and it seemed like the only difference was component spec really. I ordered all the parts I wanted to complete the vision. A box 8-speed wide range 1x group set, a BMX rear brake as the frame dictated, a Tektro V-brake for the front, some Ritchie Coyote handlebars, some Vans waffle grips, an A headset converter, a Pro Max stem, a new seat post, brown seat to match the grips, and an Amazon special 1x crankset. The wheels I pulled from a stash I already had. An Originate front rack that I had left from my OG commuter would finish the build. Then I had a kid, and the frame sat on a wall, and the parts sat in a bin waiting to be put together. As it sat, other easier or more pressing projects came into the garage and left. The whole while, the Cannondale sat, waiting for me to put it together. And of course, as a pile of brand new parts sits and sits, it will eventually get picked apart for those other, more pressing builds. Especially when money gets tight. The stem ended up on the Miata Triple Cross build. The handlebars and grips ended up on my Rat Dad bike. The front wheel was used on my Specialized Rockhopper indoor trainer bike. After about a few months of sitting, I did manage to strip the frame, not using a paint disc on the angle grinder, but by painting on a chemical paint stripper. I thought this would be a better approach given the softness of aluminum and my penchant for pressing too hard. Once stripped, I let it sit for a while as just a raw aluminum frame. Eventually, I sprayed it with primer, and after that, I started with a bone-colored enamel. Painting this bike proved to be really frustrating. I'm not sure whether it was the aluminum or it was the bone-colored paint, but it needed so many resprays and sanding and resprays and more sanding. So much so that when I ran out of paint, I didn't bother to buy more. Put the frame back on the shelf for another year. During that year, I moved homes. There's no better reminder of failure than packing up a half-finished project and moving it into a new place. Later, I found out we were expecting another kid. I really needed to finish this build. I bought some more paint and committed to painting and sanding and painting until the frame was ready to build up. Surely now, it would be a breeze. All I had to do was bolt on all these parts that had definitely not been picked apart. But of course, it wasn't easy. The rear wheel had a 6-speed hub, but would not take the 8-speed cassette. Not wanting to buy a completely new wheel, I found an 8-speed hub and relaced the rim to it for the price of some new spokes. The rear brake was missing some mounting hardware, which I had to improvise a solution for using hardware from a traditional center mount road caliper. When cabling the bike, I discovered that the rear brake cable guide had been removed, so I routed the new brake cable down the front derailleur guides and up the seat post. I went in the parts bin and found some acceptable handlebars, grips, and stem to replace the parts I robbed. The rack, however, wasn't compatible with the fork. Wouldn't sit nicely with the quick release skewers, so it wasn't used. But I did it. I finally finished the bike. Now I could go ride it around, pop some curbs, and have the bike that Instagram had promised me. I threw a leg over, took a few pedal strokes, and realized that this bike, the bike that took 2 years to build, that I moved from house to house, that put me through one annoying problem after another, didn't even fit me. I was pretty gutted, especially because for all the issues, I feel like I built a really solid bike, a beautiful bike. By now, it was December 2024, and I was not going to get top dollar for a bike in the middle of an atmospheric river. I wasn't even going to get close to what I paid for the parts, which I bought during the COVID bike boom and part shortage. I was, however, going to put a bike back on the road that had been sitting in one garage or another for the past 10 years. A mom bought the bike for her college-age son as a Christmas present. He came with her to buy it, biked it around the block, and was really pleased. I'm glad someone was going to pop this thing off curbs and get into some trouble. But he had better take care of it. I do not want this bike back in someone's garage in pieces for the next decade. Have you ever had a bike break your heart and spirit into 1,000 pieces? Let me know.